In this video, you're going to learn about Jamboard and how to use it in 15 different ways in your classroom. Just an overview of Jamboard. Jamboard can be found in your Waffle or your apps launcher. Right here's Jamboard. On Jamboard, you do have different tools that you can use. You have different pens. You have pen, marker, highlighter, brush. You do have an eraser. You can change the different colors. You do have a sticky note option where you can have students add a sticky note and they can use different colors on that sticky note. You can add pictures. You can add different shapes. You can add text boxes. And you also can do a laser. This would be useful if you already have a Jamboard that you're using and you're talking to your students about it, going over different things. It does have like a laser that you can circle things and it automatically disappears. So this is good to point out things to your students as you're going through your Jamboard. A Jamboard can have multiple pages. You can either have multiple pages in your presentation for your class, or you can have one page for each of your students, and we'll talk about that later. You can zoom in and out of your Jamboard if you need to. You can set a background. There is a grid. There's the writing lines, a gray graph, and then chalkboard, different colors. You can present to a meet. You can share a Jamboard the same way that you would share a document. You can share to a specific person. You can get a link. You can also share in Classroom. So I just look for my Jamboard and it's right here, and I can actually insert this into an assignment for my students. And then I would make sure that I decide, do I want them to view, do I want them to edit, or do I want each student to have a copy of the Jamboard? So that's a little bit about Jamboard. Now I'm going to get into the different ways that you can use Jamboard. This is just ways that I found online or that I came up with. There are other ways that you can use Jamboard. This presentation right here is available for anyone to make a copy of, and you can delete any slides that you would like. In order to delete slides, you just go up here and you can move slides around. You can delete slides and you can duplicate slides. So if there was one slide in this presentation that you would like to use, you can delete all the other slides and you can have your own copy. So the first time, or the first one that I wanted to show you is just like a worksheet. You can create a digital worksheet for your Jamboard. All I did is I went online and I found a graphic organizer and I added it as my background. The reason why I added it as the background and not just a photo or an image is because this way the students cannot move around anything on that graphic organizer. They can add text boxes, they can move text boxes, they can add pictures on top of it, but they can't actually move the picture background. So what you could do with this is you could share this with your students, whether it be one student at a time or the whole class. And then students can, based on whatever activity you're doing, whether it be a science experiment or a book that you're reading, your students can fill in text boxes to complete this graphic organizer. If at one point you want them to put in pictures, so let's say instead of them typing what happened at each point in the story, they can actually insert a picture. They would just go over to picture. Easiest thing to do would be a Google image search, and then they would just type in what they would like to insert. So I'm just going to pick a random thing. Say there's a puppy in the story that they want to place in there. You're just going to press insert, and I would practice with your students doing this, making sure they understand how to insert a picture. You can make it bigger or smaller so the student can stick a picture in there, and they can also say, oops. Puppy was sleeping under the plant. And then I can move this around to make it so that I can actually see it, and then I can see my spelling mistake. In my picture. So now the student is filling in the event of the story using either a text box or a picture. So this is one example of using it to add a graphic organizer. If you would like to, you can insert pictures ahead of time for your students. So if you know that in the story there's going to be a puppy, there's going to be a boy, there's going to be a school, you can pre-insert those and maybe sit them in the middle, and then the students wouldn't have to add them. They would just move them where they go. So you can do that for the younger students. For the older students, they should be able to insert an image using Google search. Another example of a graphic organizer. This is a little bit more advanced of a graphic organizer. This is keywords, definitions, and pictures. So if you're working on definitions of vocabulary words, the students can insert, and again, you can insert text boxes for them ahead of time, or you can have them do it. So they're just going to insert text boxes. So let's say my word is school. And then I'm going to insert a text box for, what is the definition? A place where students learn. I'm just going to change that. And then I'm going to insert one for a sentence. We learned a lot in school today. This is a very easy example, but you would adapt this to whatever your content is. And then you would add an image. So this is an image of a school, and then you would just place it in this area right here. And again, if you want to pre-insert those images, you can, or you can have your students insert the images on their own. So that's using a graphic organizer. You can take any graphic organizer, even if you have it on paper, just take a picture of it, and all you're going to do is you're going to insert, not an image, you're going to insert it as the background. So you would just add the picture right here. You would press browse and add the picture. So that's using it as a graphic organizer. Another way you could use it with a screen recorder for the students to show their learning, or you could use it to pre-record videos, instructional videos to show your students. So for example, I have the picture of the parts of the flower, the students, and I actually have the parts covered up. You wouldn't have it already labeled, but the students can just insert their text boxes, and they can, as they're talking about each of the pieces or the parts of the flower, they can insert what they're called. They can also insert pictures. They can insert pictures of the different parts of the whatever the item is. This could be used for history. You could stick a picture of a map in there for them to label different parts of a map. For math, for, let's say, a word problem, they could show different parts of the word problem. They could label parts of the important words, things like that. So you could pretty much use this for any subject. But you would also use this along with Loom so that they can record what they're doing and they can show their learning. And also the teacher can use Loom to record their lesson and then push it out to their students later. Another example is just to have a student discussion back channel. This is just an area for the students to record their learning, to record what they're thinking about. An example would be, let's say you're reading a story or watching an instructional video or something like that. And you want the students to be thinking, what are you wondering about as you're watching this video? And you're just going to ask the students to have this open in a tab. And all they're going to do is they're going to insert a sticky note, put what they're wondering. They can choose their color. And then they can place theirs on here. They can put as many as they want. Obviously, you would want to have a conversation about what is appropriate to comment, that it is about the content and it's not just having a chat with your friends. But this is a good, easy way to have that communication during a lesson. Then after the movie, after the lesson, after the experiment, you can go over what the students were wondering and did they get an answer to what they were wondering. Another thing you can do is you can annotate a piece of text. What I did is I inserted just a piece of writing. You can insert it as a picture or as a background, depending if you care if they move it around. If you want the students to, if you want the students to be able to write on this, which is what the point of this activity would be, you can actually have them underline things. You can have them circle things. You can also have them put boxes around different things. So for the blue box, you're going to insert a blue box around something that you think is important. So while they're reading whatever the text is, they're going to put a blue box around something that they believe is important. And the reason there is another one here, what I did, and I have a note down here, you could ask the students to do this on their own, but you can do this ahead of time. You're just going to make copies. So I'm just going to click on it, make a duplicate, and I'm just going to sit it on top. So that kind of looks like there's a never-ending supply of blue boxes. So all the student has to do is drag and drop their box. So now, as they're reading, they think, I think this is really important. Or I'm going to put yellow around something that I just don't understand and maybe I need to talk to my teacher about. So this is a good way of annotating what they're thinking as they're reading. Another example would be annotating an image. So let's say it's art class or history class. You could have the students break down a piece of art. So let's say, so it says down here, circle parts of the picture and what you think they mean. So if I just pull, and I created these ahead of time, or you can have your students create them. Let's say this piece right here, I want to talk about. So I'm going to get my pen. And actually, I'm just going to do a text box. I'm going to make sure that my font is yellow. I think the church. And then I'm going to say what I think it means. So then the way you could do this is you could have a copy of these on every page of your Jamboard, and each of your students has a copy, or you can just do it together. Once you share this with your students, they would have editing rights. So if you just want to do a class discussion and you can call on students to go ahead and pull their circle over, you can do it that way too. Another example is a whole class Jamboard. This is just making sure that each of your students has a piece of this Jamboard. And all you would do is you would create a new Jamboard. I'm going to go to Jamboard. I'm going to create one. And then you can label them. You don't have to, but it might make it easier, especially for the younger kids. So I'm just going to label this 1. And then the second one, I'm going to label 2. And then 3. Now, when I go back, I can say, This student, you're on page 1. This student, you're on page 2, and so forth. You cannot give different editing rights per page. Once you give a student editing rights to a Jamboard, they have editing rights throughout the whole Jamboard, but by giving it a number, by labeling it, the students know which one is theirs to be writing on. Next one is group work. This is kind of the same as the whole class Jamboard. You can use it for group work. You can take one group. You can either create the Jamboard and give them edit access, or you can have one of the students to create it and give everyone edit access. They can use it to share ideas. They can insert text, images, sticky notes. The great thing about this, if you have a student who is remote, they can work on it from home. Even like if you have things that they have to do at home after school, if they have internet access, you can have the students working on it from home, so they don't have to be in the same area. This is also helpful with trying to keep our students not right on top of each other. This is a good way of doing group work, and they don't have to be right next to each other. They can do it on Jamboard. Another example would be a virtual gallery walk. Just like we do gallery walks in the classroom, like let's say you have a piece of text that you're breaking apart and you want to break it up into pieces. Typically, we would put them on like a sticky board throughout the room, and the students would walk around. Well, you could do that on a Jamboard. So I have my blank Jamboard over here, and I could put my piece of text. The first piece is on here. The second piece is on here. And then the students can go through the pages, going through the text. They can insert pictures on it. They can they can circle things using the pen. They can insert text boxes, sticky notes, or you can have them writing down their learning on, let's say, a notebook or something like that. It doesn't have to be virtual. The next thing is vocab work. This would work really well for vocabulary. I actually, my daughter, her teacher uses it this way. They use Jamboard to define vocabulary words. So what you could do is you could have one Jamboard for the whole class or one for each student. Each page has a vocabulary word. You could put them on there for them, and then share it with the students, and they'll all have access. And then they're just going to put everything they know about their vocabulary word. They can put sticky notes with different words that they find. They can define it. They can insert pictures, and all of those, inserting pictures, you can do it right from here. They can go through the pictures and pick the ones that they believe show a wavelength. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm just going to throw some in here. And then they can move these around. And then they have all of their vocabulary words in one presentation, and they can go back. Another one, I thought this was really cool for the primary kids. You can create like an online letterboard. Typically, we have magnets on these, and we use like a metal sheet, and the students can bring the letters over to spell something. Well, on here, you don't have to have the magnetic words, and the students can just bring their words over on this Jamboard and create their words. If you want multiple of each word, same thing. You're just going to click on the letter. You're going to duplicate, and then you're just going to sit it on top. And again, if you want a copy of this, just make a copy of this presentation, and then just delete the rest of the pages that you don't want. Similar to that, you can use this for, let's say, base 10 blocks or shapes, or pretty much any manipulative you can think of. You can have the students creating numbers using the base 10 blocks, and then you can have them actually writing or putting a text box, what does this equal? So I have 100, a 10, and 2. This equals 112. You can also use shapes. You can use the background that I have this on right now is the grid. So the students can line it up and see this does not have a 90-degree angle. So they can look at the angles, like this one right here. It lines up with a line, so it does have a 90-degree angle. Again, you can create multiple of these just by doing duplicate. You can also use a Jamboard just for instruction. If you are on your iPad and you're presenting from your iPad and you just want to, let's say, do problems on the board, write down brainstorming that your students are going through, any of those things you can just do right on your Jamboard. You can have multiple pages, and you can share with your students so they can collaborate too. They don't even have to leave their seat. Another thing that I found, people use it for calculating perimeter. So if you can put the shapes on there for them, or you can ask them to put the shapes on there, and let's say I stuck this shape on here ahead of time, and I tell the students that I want them to find the area and the perimeter. You would have a conversation about counting all the blocks. Okay, count all the blocks over here. You can label. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can use my pen. Let's change my color to black. This one is 7 units. You can also use it for area. There's other ways you can use this, but all I did was I selected the blue graph background. Another one is to create a digital map. This can be done using any type of map, a map from a story, a map of the United States, a map of any country. I have right here Europe, and different things that the students can do. You can ask them to color in specific countries that, oops, and I have the pen right now, so I want to do the brush, and then the students can color in different countries. They can label countries just like I labeled that country right there. They can also insert pictures. So I inserted a picture. Maybe I want to stick in a picture for the country that I labeled. And then I can maybe draw an arrow. So you can use this to label any types of maps. And all I did to insert the map was that I took a screenshot. You could take a picture of, if you have a piece of paper map, and I just inserted it as the background. That way the students can't move the picture around. The last idea is to use a Jamboard to brainstorm and sort ideas. So this could be used any subject, any lesson. It's just where you have a place for your students to record all the things that they're thinking about at the moment. And then once you have all of your student ideas, you can have them sort them. So this could be by using the pen and drawing a chart for your students to sort their ideas. So the students will move their ideas to whatever category they believe they go to. This can be a conversation that you have with your class. This could be something that could be done in small groups. So if each small group takes one jam from the Jamboard, that small group could sort their ideas. Again, this can be used for any subject, pretty much any lesson where you're gathering ideas. It could be for writing when the students are coming up with ideas on what to write about. It could be for science when you are brainstorming, when you're hypothesizing what you think is going to happen in an experiment. For history, it could just be bringing up prior knowledge about a subject. So it pretty much could be used for anything. And it's also a good way to have something for the students to look back on later on. Those are some different ideas of ways you can use Jamboard. There are so many other different ways that you can use it. If you have any other ideas that you want to share, if you use Jamboard in your classroom and you want to share with everyone else how you're using it, please let me know, put in a ticket, and I would love to either come to co-teach with you, or we can put information about your lesson in the newsletter. But if you need anything, let me know. Thank you.